Karen Hayes slumped into seat 12F, the worn leather familiar under her fingertips, and exhaled a shaky breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The cabin lights flickered as passengers settled around her, murmuring conversations blending into the low hum of the plane. Outside, the tarmac stretched like a gray river under the fading sunlight, but Karen barely noticed. All she could think about was Max, her little boy, now 7, waiting somewhere on the other side of this flight, unaware that his mother was coming home. It had been 5 long years since she'd last seen him, 5 years of deployments, missions that had taken her to the farthest corners of the world. She had left the Air Force to raise him alone, trading the roar of F-22 engines for sleepless nights and diaper changes. Yet, even in civilian life, the memories of combat refused to leave her. She could still hear the whine of incoming missiles, the crackle of radios, the distant shouts of her squadron. The war had carved itself into her mind like a permanent tattoo, one that Max had never seen. Karen's fingers fumbled with the small dog-eared photo she carried in her jacket pocket. Max grinned up at her with missing teeth and an oversized smile that she had memorized on every deployment. She traced the edges of his face with her thumb, silently promising him that she would be there this time for real. No more late-night calls through unstable satellite connections. No more saying goodbye at the airport with tears in her eyes. This time, she would be home. The plane rumbled as it taxied toward the runway. Karen adjusted her seatbelt, the metallic click echoing in the quiet cabin. Across the aisle, a woman with a baby struggled to calm the child, and a man in a business suit scrolled endlessly on his laptop. The world outside her memories pressed in the mundane, the ordinary, but Karen's mind was somewhere else entirely. She kept replaying Max's smile, the way he had run to her during her last leave, his small arms wrapped tight around her neck. Then she noticed them, 2 men in crisp flight suits seated near the emergency exit. Their posture was rigid, almost unnatural. One of them adjusted the collar of his jacket, the other ran a hand over a tablet with an intensity that made Karen's stomach tighten. She had seen that focus before, the kind that came from hours in the cockpit, staring danger in the face while the rest of the world seemed oblivious. A shiver ran down her spine. Why are they here? She wondered, glancing around the cabin to see if anyone else had noticed, but everyone else seemed absorbed in their screens, their conversations, their lives. Karen's heart picked up pace. Something was different. The captain's voice crackled through the intercom, startling her. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special announcement today for one of our passengers." Karen froze. She felt a tight knot form in her chest. Her mind raced. Special announcement. On a civilian flight. She instinctively glanced toward the men in flight suits who now seemed to be standing, their eyes scanning the cabin. One of them, the taller one, locked eyes with her. The recognition was unmistakable. "Viper 1, the man said, his voice low but firm, carrying through the faint hum of the plane. "Welcome back." Karen's breath caught in her throat. Her past, the life she thought she had left behind, had found her. "Viper 1, she whispered under her breath, tasting the words like smoke. That had been her call sign, the identity she had carried through high-altitude dogfights, secret missions, and classified operations. She hadn't told anyone she was coming home. Not a soul, not even Max. The cabin seemed to shift. The ordinary chatter, the clinking of cups, the soft whir of the overhead fan, all faded into the background. Every instinct in her body screamed that this moment was more than coincidence. These men weren't just passengers. They were ghosts from a past she had tried to bury, and now they were here, pulling her back into a world she thought she had escaped. Karen's mind raced, memories flashing like strobe lights. She remembered the first time she had flown an F-22, her hands trembling over the controls, the thrill of mastering a machine designed to dominate the sky. She remembered missions where seconds had meant life or death, where a wrong move could destroy everything. And she remembered the camaraderie, the squadron that had become family, men and women who had risked everything together. The tall pilot's eyes softened and he gave her a small nod. "We thought we'd lost you," he said quietly, almost to himself. Karen felt her chest tighten. How could they know she was here? How could they know she was coming back? Questions collided in her mind, each one sharper than the last. A sudden jolt from the plane snapped her out of her thoughts. Turbulence, or maybe something else, shook the cabin, making cups rattle and passengers gasp. Karen's knuckles whitened on the armrests. Her eyes darted to the men again. They were calm, unflinching, but the intensity in their gaze told her that whatever they knew, it was serious. The intercom crackled once more. "Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened." And again, "A special welcome to Viper 1." The words hit her like a physical blow. Her fingers trembled as she gripped the photo of Max. She had imagined this flight as quiet, private, a simple return to normalcy. But normalcy was gone. Someone, had pulled her past directly into her present, and it wasn't leaving room for hesitation. Karen's mind raced as the plane gained altitude, the city lights shrinking below her. Who were these men really? How did they know her call sign? And why now? Why on a commercial flight, thousands of feet above the ground, in what was supposed to be the most ordinary moment of her life? Her heart pounded as the tall pilot's gaze met hers again. No words were exchanged, but a silent message passed between them. The past wasn't over, and her story was far from finished. And then, just as the hum of the engine seemed to grow louder, a shadow of doubt crept into her mind. Something was coming, something urgent, something dangerous. Karen's stomach twisted, a familiar premonition she hadn't felt since flying missions in hostile skis. She clenched the armrests. Her eyes darted around the cabin one last time, and she whispered under her breath, "Whatever's coming, I can't run from it this time." The plane leveled off, and outside the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in shades of orange and blood red. Karen's pulse raced. Something was waiting for her on the ground, something she couldn't ignore. And the two men in flight suits, they were no ordinary passengers. They were the heralds of a storm she hadn't seen coming. The camera of her mind focused, zooming in on the tall pilot as he leaned slightly toward her, voice barely audible over the cabin hum. "Viper 1, it's time." Karen's breath caught in her throat. She had no idea what that meant, but one thing was certain. Her life, her past, and her son's future were about to collide in ways she could never have imagined. The plane continued slicing through the sky, leaving clouds and secrets behind. And Karen knew with a gut-deep certainty that nothing in her life would ever be the same again. Karen's hands trembled as she stared at the tall pilot, the words "Viper 1, welcome back" reverberating in her mind. Her throat went dry and she could barely breathe. She had imagined returning home 100 times, reuniting with Max, holding him tight, telling him stories, but never like this. Never with ghosts of her past showing up in seat 12F. The cabin hummed quietly, passengers oblivious to the tension rippling through her veins. But Karen's world had shrunk to the space between her and the two men in flight suits. They weren't just strangers. She recognized the way they carried themselves, the precision, the discipline, the calm under pressure. She had seen it in fighter squadrons, in missions that had tested her limits, and she knew they weren't civilians. The taller pilot, broad-shouldered, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through her, leaned slightly forward, keeping his voice low. "We didn't think you'd come back like this," he said. There was a weight in his tone, a mixture of relief, surprise, and something she couldn't quite place. Karen's mind raced. Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The man smiled faintly, but there was no humor in it. "You don't recognize me. We flew together, Viper 1, Iraq, Syria. You saved my life on Talon Ridge. I'm Jace Monroe." Karen's breath caught. Jace Monroe. The name was like a punch to the gut, a reminder of battles she had fought and victories that had cost too much. Memories she had tried to bury surfaced in a flash. The deafening roar of jet engines, the smell of fuel and burning metal, the adrenaline that had kept her alive when everything else seemed lost. She had thought of him as a brother-in-arms, someone she could trust with her life. And here he was, standing mere feet away, calling her by the call sign she thought only the squadron knew. Before she could respond, the second pilot, shorter but no less imposing, spoke. His voice was calm, calculated. "And I'm Marcus Reed. We've been waiting for you." Corinne's stomach dropped. Waiting for her. What was this about? Why now? She had left the Air Force, left the missions behind, and sworn never to touch that life again. And yet, here they were, two men from her past who knew more about her than anyone else in the world. I don't understand," she stammered. "Why are you here? How did you know I was on this flight?" Jace's eyes softened, but the urgency in his gaze didn't waver. "Some things you don't leave behind, Corinne, and some things don't stay quiet. You need to come with us. There's something happening back home, something only you can handle." Corinne's chest tightened. Something back home. She had pictured coming back to a quiet life, Max waiting at the airport, a simple ride home, maybe a night of dinner and laughter. She hadn't imagined danger, she hadn't imagined a threat that would pull her back into the shadows she had fought to escape. Her fingers dug into the armrests of her seat. "I'm just a mom now," she whispered. "I don't fight anymore, I can't, Max." Her voice cracked. Jace leaned closer, his expression unreadable but his words sharp. "You never stopped being Viper One, and right now, that's exactly who the world needs." The cabin seemed to grow smaller, the air heavier. Corinne could feel her past colliding with her present, and she wasn't sure if she was ready. She remembered the missions she had survived, the squadron members she had lost, the enemies she had faced. Every second had prepared her for this moment, but that didn't make it any less terrifying. Her eyes darted to the overhead compartment, imagining Max's face when he saw her. She had left him as a baby. He had grown up without her beside him, and now she was supposed to risk everything to chase. What danger? Revenge? Duty? Marcus broke the silence. "Corinne, time is short. There's no other way. You're the only one who can do this without putting innocent lives at risk. You're the only one trained for what's coming." Corinne's pulse hammered in her ears. She could feel the weight of the photo in her pocket, the small, smiling face of her son, so full of life, so unaware of the storm looming over him. Her chest ached. How can I leave him? But at the same time, a familiar fire ignited inside her. She had always been a fighter, a protector. And right now, that instinct was screaming at her louder than her fear. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her shaking hands. "Tell me," she said finally, her voice firm despite the racing of her heart. "Tell me everything. What's happening?" Jace nodded, pulling a sleek black tablet from his flight suit pocket. The screen lit up with images that made Corinne's stomach drop. A drone feed of her hometown, smoke rising from buildings, military vehicles moving in patterns she didn't recognize, alarms blaring. She could see the streets, the school, even the apartment block where Max lived. Her fingers trembled as she realized the gravity of what she was seeing. Someone was threatening the life she had built, the child she had fought so hard to protect. And the irony cut deep. She had left the battlefield to be a mother, only to find that war had followed her home. Jace's voice was steady, almost gentle, but carried the weight of command. "We need you, Viper One. You're the only one who can stop this before it's too late." Corinne felt a cold wave of dread wash over her. Her entire life, her sacrifices, her dreams of a quiet, peaceful existence, it all seemed to crumble in that instant. She had trained for high-altitude combat, for split-second decisions, for lives hanging in the balance. But she had never imagined fighting to protect her own city, her own son, from shadows she hadn't yet seen. Her mind spun. The woman she had been, Viper One, the pilot, the soldier, rose up alongside the mother she had become. They collided in a storm of fear, anger, and determination. She couldn't ignore this. She couldn't run. Not now, not ever. Corinne closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and felt the familiar rush, the readiness to act, to protect, to fight. Her hand tightened around the photo of Max. "Okay," she whispered, voice barely audible. "Tell me what I need to do." The two pilots exchanged a brief glance, a silent acknowledgement of the storm that was about to break. Jace tapped a few commands into his tablet, and the drone feed zoomed in on a shadowed figure moving swiftly through the streets, a face Karen would never forget. The betrayal, the danger, the stakes, they were all here. And in that moment, Karen realized one terrifying truth. Her past had caught up with her. Her present was under siege, and the fight she thought she had left behind was waiting for her on the ground, ready to test every skill, every instinct, every ounce of courage she had left. The plane hummed along the sky, steady, calm, and ordinary to the casual eye. But for Karen, the turbulence inside her heart had just begun. She glanced at the two men once more, eyes sharp and serious. Jace's lips moved, almost inaudibly, and the words cut straight through her fear. "Viper 1, it's time to fly again." Karen's pulse thundered in her ears. The world below her waited, and she had a choice to make, one that could change everything. Karen's mind swirled as the plane cruised steadily at 35,000 feet, the city lights far below twinkling like stars scattered across the earth. Yet, despite the ordinary hum of the cabin and the mundane chatter of passengers, Karen felt trapped in a storm of memories. Her heart pounded with adrenaline, her body tense, every nerve screaming that something was about to happen. She stared at the two pilots in flight suits, Jace Monroe and Marcus Reed, sitting near the emergency exit, calm yet alert, exuding an authority she had only known in the cockpit. Their presence, so familiar yet entirely out of place on a civilian flight, forced Karen's memories to flood forward. She remembered the first time she had flown the F-22 Raptor. She had been just 23, green but determined, sitting in a cockpit that had felt too big, too powerful for her hands. The roar of the engines had been intoxicating, the rush of flight addictive. She had earned her call sign, Viper 1, in a scramble mission over the deserts of Iraq, a call sign that had followed her through firefights, close calls, and victories she had never spoken of. Karen's stomach knotted as a vivid memory surfaced, Talon Ridge, a mission she had led when the squadron was ambushed. Enemy fire had rained down, missiles tracking targets too fast to evade. Her squadron had been pinned, outnumbered, and she had made a choice that no civilian could understand. She had risked everything, diving into enemy territory to draw fire away from her team. The screams over comms, the warning blares, the smell of burning metal, it all rushed back in terrifying clarity. And in the chaos, Jace had been right there beside her, guiding her, trusting her instincts when the odds were stacked against them. They had survived. Barely. Now, 5 years later, they were here, on a commercial flight, thousands of feet above her supposed safe life. Karen's pulse quickened. How had they tracked her? How had they found her? Marcus Reed leaned slightly forward, interrupting her spiraling thoughts. "Karen," he said quietly, "I know this is overwhelming, but we don't have time to explain everything in detail. The threat, it's bigger than anything you've faced in the air, and you need to be ready for it, immediately." Karen swallowed hard. She had left the Air Force, left the missions behind, and tried to create a normal life. Max, her apartment, grocery stores, bedtime stories, laundry, the quiet, ordinary existence she had fought so hard to hold on to, and yet here it was, completely shattered. She clutched the photo of Max in her pocket, feeling the warmth of his tiny face. "I'm just a mom now," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I can't. What if something happens to him while I'm—" "You won't let that happen," Jace interrupted gently but firmly. "You're Viper 1, that instinct, that skill, it never leaves. It's in your blood." Karen's eyes filled with tears. It was one thing to fight in the sky, another to fight for her home, her son, her life as a civilian. She wasn't prepared for this. She thought she had left danger behind. She had fought for a life of normalcy, but danger had found her anyway. Her mind flicked back again to another memory. Max as a toddler, standing at the airport, holding up a handmade sign. "Welcome home, Mommy." His small arms had wrapped around her neck, his tiny legs dangling as she spun him around. She remembered the tears, the laughter, the feeling that she had been missing something vital every day of her deployment. And now she realized Max was vulnerable again, possibly in danger even now, as she sat trapped on this plane thousands of feet above the ground. The seatbelt light above flickered, and turbulence shook the plane gently. Karen gripped the armrests, feeling the familiar premonition she had felt in combat, a warning that danger was closer than she wanted to admit. She glanced at Jace, whose eyes were fixed on a tablet analyzing encrypted feeds. Marcus kept scanning the cabin, their awareness meticulous, professional, unnervingly calm. Karen realized that she had once been like them, hyper-alert, always ready, but motherhood had dulled those edges. And now she would have to sharpen them again, instantly. Jace finally spoke, breaking the heavy silence. "Karen, we didn't just find you by chance. Something or someone has targeted your hometown. Civilians are at risk, and there's a specific person involved, someone who betrayed us on deployment. Someone we thought was gone. He's back." Karen's chest tightened, cold dread washing over her. Betrayal. She remembered the man's face, the one she had trusted, the one who had endangered the squad and vanished with classified intel years ago. She had thought he had disappeared, leaving behind only whispers and scars. But if he was back, then her home, her life, Max's safety, they were all in jeopardy. The hum of the plane seemed deafening now, the ordinary world below them oblivious to the storm coming. Karen's hand shook as she gripped the tablet that Jace handed her. It displayed a drone feed of her hometown, streets eerily empty, vehicles moving in coordinated patterns, smoke rising in the distance. Her heart raced as she spotted the apartment block where Max lived. Her stomach churned. She had come home to protect him, but he could already be in danger. Every instinct she had, mother, pilot, soldier, screamed at her to act, but the first step wasn't clear. She was a civilian again, trapped on a plane, facing threats she could only begin to imagine. Marcus's voice cut through the tension. "Karen, you're the only one trained for this. The F-22, the operations, the mission planning, it all matters now, and you have seconds to decide if you'll step back into that life." Karen's mind spun, memories and fear colliding. She thought of Max, of her own survival instinct, of the call sign Viper 1, the identity she had buried under motherhood and normalcy. That name wasn't just a title, it was a weapon, a shield, and a responsibility. She swallowed, gripping the photo of Max one last time. Her voice faltered. The plane seemed to hold its breath with her. "I'm in. Tell me what I need to do." Jace nodded, eyes sharp. "Good, but understand this, once we land, there's no turning back. Your life as a civilian, as a mom who thought she was safe, it's over. There's no half measure here. You're stepping into a war zone disguised as home." Karen felt the weight of his words pressing down, heavy as the wings of the plane cutting through the night sky. Her past, her present, and her son's future hung together by a fragile thread, and she was about to reach for it. The plane hummed along, steady and ordinary to the other passengers. But Karen knew better. Every muscle in her body coiled with readiness, every memory sharpened into a weapon. She was about to descend into danger the likes of which she hadn't faced in years. And then the tablet screen blinked, a figure moving swiftly, unseen by anyone else, navigating the streets of her hometown. A shadow from the past, familiar, dangerous, and determined. Karen's breath caught in her throat as she realized the stakes. This wasn't just about survival. This was personal. The tall pilot leaned closer, voice barely audible over the engine hum. "Viper 1, it's time to fly again." Karen's pulse thundered in her ears. The city below, Max, and the ghost of a betrayal she had thought long buried awaited her. And for the first time since leaving the cockpit, she felt that unmistakable, terrifying thrill of a mission she couldn't refuse, because failure wasn't an option. The plane dipped slightly, tilting over the clouds, and Karen gripped the armrests until her knuckles ached. Her gaze shifted from the darkened city below to the two pilots beside her. Jace Monroe and Marcus Reed had transformed the once ordinary flight into something unrecognizable, a prelude to danger she hadn't asked for, yet couldn't ignore. Karen, Jace said quietly, eyes fixed on the tablet displaying the drone feed. We've tracked the target to multiple locations in the city. He's organized, experienced, and he knows you're coming. This isn't random. Karen's stomach dropped. Her past had always followed her, but she hadn't expected it to intercept her life in this way, here, thousands of feet above her home, with only strangers turned familiar faces to guide her. "Why me?" she whispered. "I left that life behind. I'm a mom now. I don't fight anymore." Marcus leaned forward, voice calm but edged with urgency. "Because you're the only one who can. The training, the experience, the instincts. You're not just a mother anymore. You're Viper One, and Viper One never fails her mission." Karen's chest tightened. She could feel the weight of her son, Max, pressing on her like a physical presence. She had left the Air Force to protect him from danger, but now the danger was at her doorstep. She imagined him at home, playing, laughing, oblivious to the shadow that was already closing in. Fear surged through her, but so did determination. Her memories assaulted her, each one sharper than the last. The first mission she flew in an F-22, the cockpit lights casting her face in harsh glows, her hands moving instinctively over controls she barely understood. The Talon Ridge ambush, her squad pinned by overwhelming enemy fire, missiles screaming past her wingtip, Jace's calm voice in her comms guiding her through the chaos. She had survived because she had no choice. She had fought not just for herself, but for every life depending on her. And now Max's life depended on her. Karen's fingers trembled as she gripped the small photo of Max she had tucked in her jacket pocket. She traced his smiling face with a shaking thumb. "I have to do this," she whispered under her breath. Her words weren't a declaration, they were a vow. Jace glanced at her, reading the decision in her eyes before she could fully voice it. "Good. But understand this, once we land, everything changes. There's no civilian life anymore. You'll need every skill you've ever learned and a few you've buried for years." Karen's pulse thundered in her ears. The cockpit of her mind, the one that had once been a sanctuary of instinct and precision, flickered back to life. She imagined herself strapped into the F-22, engine roaring, missile systems armed, the sky stretching endlessly above, the ground a map of threats and civilians alike. She had trained for life-or-death scenarios thousands of feet above the earth, but she had never flown this mission. Never like this. Marcus's tablet flickered, zooming in on the shadowed figure moving through the city streets. Karen's breath caught. She recognized him immediately. The man who had betrayed their squad, who had vanished years ago, leaving destruction in his wake. He was precise, methodical, and fast. He had clearly planned this attack, and he was waiting for her to arrive. Her chest tightened as adrenaline surged. Every fiber of her body screamed to move, to act, to protect. But the plane was thousands of feet above the ground, carrying her to a mission she hadn't volunteered for. She was a mother trapped between the safety of her son and the call of duty she thought she had abandoned. "Karen," Jace said, leaning close, voice low, "he knows your history. He knows what you're capable of, that's why he's waiting. If you hesitate, your son's life will be at risk. You have to act fast." Karen's hands shook. The familiar weight of fear mixed with adrenaline, sharpening her senses. She had spent years hiding from the world, trying to create a peaceful life for Max, yet the world wasn't done with her. Danger had a way of finding her, of demanding the best version of herself, the version that had earned the call sign Viper One. Her mind raced through contingencies. Could she intercept him without endangering civilians? Could she navigate the chaos in her city, the streets filled with innocent lives, while tracking a man who knew every move she would make? Her stomach twisted. She had faced enemies in the sky, but this was on the ground in her home, where her son played unaware of the storm approaching. Jace tapped a few commands on his tablet. "We've coordinated with local law enforcement and intelligence teams. You'll have support, but only to a point. Too many eyes on you and the target will vanish. It's up to you to draw him out, identify him, and neutralize the threat without harming anyone else. Are you ready for this?" Karen swallowed hard. Her eyes darted to the city below, where the drone feed showed chaos, vehicles moving in unusual patterns, shadows darting between buildings, smoke curling from a distant rooftop. Her city, her home, was under threat, and she had a split second to decide if she could step back into the life of Viper One, knowing that hesitation could cost her son everything. "Yes," she finally whispered, the word trembling but resolute. "I'm ready." Marcus nodded, a faint hint of respect in his eyes. "Then we move fast. There's no time to hesitate. Once we land, the operation begins. Every second counts. Every choice matters." Karen's pulse surged. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her chest, the fear of losing Max, the thrill of returning to the skis, or at least to action, racing through her veins. She was a mother, yes, but she was also a warrior, and both sides of her were about to collide in ways she couldn't yet predict. The plane continued its descent, cutting through clouds as if racing against time itself. Karen stared out the window at the horizon, the city growing larger, the lights flickering like a map of both danger and hope. Somewhere below, her son was safe for now, but that wouldn't last. And then Jace leaned closer, voice barely audible over the plane's hum, his piercing blue eyes locking with hers. "Karen, once we land, there's no turning back. Are you sure you want to do this?" Karen's fingers tightened around the photo of Max. Her voice was firm, even as her heart hammered in her chest. "Yes, for him I have to." A shiver ran down her spine. She didn't know what lay ahead, only that her life, her past, and her son's future were about to collide in a way that would change everything. The plane touched down on the tarmac with a jolt, engines roaring, as if heralding the storm awaiting her. Karen exhaled slowly, bracing herself. Every muscle in her body coiled, every instinct awakened. The ordinary world she had hoped for no longer existed. Her past had returned, demanding attention, and she was about to face a danger she could not ignore. She glanced at the pilots one last time before standing, her decision made. Jace gave a brief nod, Marcus checked his tablet once more, and together they moved toward the exit. Karen's heart pounded, not just from fear, but from the grim thrill of knowing the fight had just begun. And as she stepped onto the tarmac, the wind whipping against her face, Karen realized the terrifying truth. Home was no longer a place of safety. It was a battlefield. And the enemy her past made flesh was waiting. Karen Hayes' boots slammed onto the tarmac, the roar of jet engines vibrating through her bones. The cold night air cut through her jacket, but she barely felt it. Her heart was racing, adrenaline surging through every vein. The city lay before her like a battlefield she had never imagined she would return to, not as a pilot on a mission, but as a mother, a woman caught between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Jace and Marcus moved swiftly beside her, their footsteps precise, echoing the rhythm of soldiers trained to move without hesitation. Karen's gaze darted to the streets beyond the airport, a chaotic maze of shadows, smoke curling into the night, and the faint glimmer of emergency lights painting the pavement in stark reds and blues. She could see the vehicles moving in patterns too coordinated to be random, and her pulse quickened. Someone had orchestrated this. Someone dangerous. Jace tapped the tablet in his hand, his eyes scanning the data with precision. "Karen, the target is already in motion. He's moving through the northern sector, near Max's school and your apartment complex. Civilians are at risk. We need to intercept him before he gets to his primary objective." Karen's stomach dropped. Max, her son. The thought of him in the crossfire made her hands shake. She gritted her teeth and stuffed the photo of him into her pocket. "I can't lose him. Not now, not ever." Marcus's voice cut through her thoughts, calm but firm. "We've coordinated with law enforcement, but you'll be the one drawing him out. He knows your history, Viper One. He knows what you're capable of. You have to be the bait and the shield for everyone else." Karen felt her breath catch. The word bait resonated like a physical blow. She wasn't just a mother, she was being asked to put herself in danger to protect Max, the city, and strangers she didn't even know. But the fire inside her, the Viper One instinct she had buried under years of civilian life, ignited. She couldn't run. She wouldn't. She followed the two pilots to a sleek, black SUV waiting near the tarmac. The engine growled to life, and Karen slid into the backseat, her mind calculating every possible scenario. Her eyes flicked to the tablet, watching the drone feed zoom in on the shadowy figure weaving through the streets, moving with uncanny precision, and every instinct screamed that he was anticipating her every step. "Karen," Jace said from the passenger seat, voice low, "you have to understand we're dealing with someone who betrayed us on deployment. He's smart, methodical, and ruthless. He won't hesitate. He knows you're coming. This isn't just a mission, it's personal." Karen's chest tightened. Betrayal. She remembered the man's face vividly, the one she had trusted, the one who had endangered their squad on a mission, the one who had vanished with classified intel and left devastation behind. And now he was back, orchestrating chaos in her home city. The SUV roared through the streets, weaving between police barricades and abandoned vehicles. Smoke and flickering lights painted the city in an apocalyptic glow. Karen's mind raced. Every memory of aerial combat, every split-second decision in the F-22 now applied to a different battlefield. The city was her sky, the streets her flight path, and the enemy below moved like a predator anticipating her every move. The drone feed zoomed in closer. Karen's heart sank. The figure moved with deliberate intent toward a heavily populated area near Max's school. Panic surged. She could almost see her son's face, the way he would have been laughing with his friends if he were still outside. She clenched her fists. Not today, not him. Jace's voice broke through her thoughts. "Karen, you'll have to draw him out. Follow the route but keep civilians in mind. Every decision matters. Hesitation could be deadly." Karen nodded, swallowing her fear. Her pulse raced, but she forced herself to think logically. Her hands gripped the tablet, tracing the city streets, predicting the enemy's path. Her mind calculated angles, escape routes, and potential traps. This wasn't just about her instincts. It was about strategy, precision, and survival. Suddenly, the tablet pinged. A camera feed from a rooftop security system illuminated the enemy in stark relief. Karen's breath caught. He was manipulating the environment, using shadows, vehicles, and people as cover. Every move was calculated to maximize chaos, to force her into a corner. She felt a surge of anger. "You won't touch my son. You won't touch my city." The SUV screeched to a halt near a narrow alleyway. Jace and Marcus exchanged a brief glance, then turned to Karen. "You'll have to continue on foot," Marcus said. "He's too close to civilians. You'll need to maneuver quickly and we'll provide overwatch." Karen's heart pounded, but she didn't hesitate. She leapt from the SUV, feet hitting the asphalt with determination. The city around her was alive with danger, smoke, shadows, distant sirens, but she felt an eerie calm. Every split-second decision in the F-22 had trained her for this, even if the battlefield had changed. She moved swiftly through the alleyways, eyes scanning every corner. The shadowy figure was just ahead, moving faster than she expected, blending into the chaos like a ghost. She could feel his awareness. He knew she was coming. He anticipated her every step. Karen pulled the tablet from her pocket, tracking his movements in real time. Her breath came in short bursts. Every instinct screamed that she needed to act, but the stakes were higher than any mission she had ever flown. One wrong move, one hesitation, and civilians, including Max, could be caught in the crossfire. Then she saw him, a flash of recognition that made her stomach twist. The man who had betrayed their squad years ago, the one she had thought gone forever, was moving with a calculated precision that terrified her. And yet, for the first time in years, Karen felt the old fire ignite inside her. She was Viper One. She had faced impossible odds before, and now she had no choice but to confront this threat head-on. Her hands tightened on the tablet. She whispered under her breath, determination hardening her voice. "You picked the wrong city, the wrong mother, the wrong target." And with that, Karen Hayes, mother and warrior, stepped fully into the battle, knowing that every move from this point forward could mean life or death, not just for herself, but for the city and for Max. The shadow ahead paused for a split second, almost sensing her presence. Karen froze, every muscle coiled, every sense sharpened. The city held its breath, and in that heartbeat she realized something chilling. The enemy had anticipated her arrival, almost as if he had been waiting for this moment all along. The tension hung in the air, electric and suffocating. Karen had drawn him out, but the battle was just beginning. Cliffhanger. Karen has intercepted the enemy's trail, but he has anticipated her moves. Civilians and her son's safety hang in the balance, and she must act fast to prevent catastrophe. Karen Hayes crouched behind a dumpster, her breath coming in shallow, controlled bursts. The city streets were a war zone of shadows, smoke, and flickering lights. The shadowy figure, the man who had betrayed her squad years ago, was just ahead, moving with ruthless precision. Every instinct she had honed in the cockpit screamed that this encounter could end in disaster in an instant. She adjusted her grip on the tablet, watching the real-time drone feed. The man had split his forces, or at least, there were accomplices lurking in the shadows. Civilian vehicles moved like obstacles in a maze, and Karen had to anticipate their positions as much as his. Her pulse thundered in her ears, a mix of fear and adrenaline sharpening every nerve. "Viper 1, Jace's voice crackled through the earpiece, calm but urgent. "You have to draw him out toward the extraction zone. He knows you're here. Move carefully but decisively. Civilians are in the area, avoid casualties at all costs." Karen swallowed hard. Every memory of aerial combat, the milliseconds that determined life or death, the split-second calculations in the F-22 applied here on the ground. Her past and present collided in a storm of fear, adrenaline, and determination. "I am his mother. I am his enemy. I am Viper 1. She moved swiftly through the alleyways, ducking behind overturned trash bins, keeping a careful eye on civilians scattered in the area. Her eyes locked on the target, who was now carrying what looked like a briefcase, possibly containing explosives or stolen intel. His movements were fluid, deliberate, and calculated, as though he had been expecting her. Karen's mind raced. He's setting a trap. He's always setting a trap. Her chest tightened as she remembered Talon Ridge, the ambush, the betrayal, the feeling of being surrounded. And yet she knew this was different. This time she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for Max, for the city, for everyone in the streets around her. A sudden noise, a car door slamming, made her freeze. Shadows shifted. The target had noticed her. He paused, scanning the streets, his eyes sharp and calculating. Karen's heartbeat quickened. She could feel the tension in the air, electric and suffocating. Every second mattered. She whispered into the earpiece, "He sees me. I need a clear path. How close are you guys?" 2 blocks away, Marcus replied, his voice calm. "We've got Overwatch. You draw him out and we'll move in. But Karen, be careful. He's anticipating your every move." Karen clenched her fists. She had trained for this. Every maneuver, every calculation, every instinct from her years in the cockpit returned in sharp clarity. She wasn't just a mother anymore, she was Viper 1, predator and protector in one. She darted from cover to cover, keeping the target in sight. Her mind calculated angles, escape routes, and potential threats. Every movement was precise, deliberate, and measured. The shadowy figure began to move again, toward a street crowded with civilians. Karen's stomach twisted. Not there. He'll hurt innocents if I don't stop him. She made a decision. Moving quickly, she positioned herself in a narrow alley that would funnel the target toward a safer zone, the extraction point where Jace and Marcus had positioned backup. She kept low, keeping her movements silent but visible enough to draw him out. The target hesitated, sensing the trap. Karen felt a shiver of fear, but also a rush of adrenaline. She had anticipated his hesitation. Just like old times, she thought, remembering missions where milliseconds determined survival. Suddenly, he bolted, recognizing the maneuver. Karen sprinted after him, keeping her distance, her eyes scanning for civilians. She could see Max's school in the distance, the place she had feared would be hit first. Her chest tightened with a mix of fear and determination. Viper 1, Jace's voice urged, draw him to the extraction zone. Move now. Karen's legs burned, but she pushed forward, every step precise, every thought focused. The man glanced back, realizing he was being funneled. His pace quickened and Karen's mind raced. One wrong move and innocent lives are at risk. She rounded a corner, forcing him to change direction toward the extraction zone. Backup units were visible now, police vehicles, tactical teams, and the drones providing real-time intel. Karen's heart pounded. Every step, every movement, every calculation mattered. The target reached for the briefcase in his hands. Karen didn't hesitate. She sprinted, tackled him to the ground, and twisted him to prevent the weapon from being activated. Sparks flew from the briefcase. It was rigged, but she had caught it just in time. The target struggled, his face twisted in rage and recognition. "You think you've won, Viper 1, he spat. "You can't stop what's coming." Karen's breath came in ragged gasps. She pinned him, using every ounce of strength and skill. "I'm not just Viper 1, she hissed. "I'm a mother, and I will stop you no matter what it takes." Police and tactical units moved in, securing the area, taking the accomplices into custody. Marcus and Jace arrived at her side, checking her over quickly. "Nice work," Jace said, his usual calm tone carrying a hint of admiration. Karen exhaled, relief mingling with exhaustion. The city was safe for now. Civilians had been spared, and Max, her son, was still out there, unaware of how close danger had come. But as she straightened, the shadow of the original enemy loomed in her mind. He had warned her, "You can't stop what's coming." The words echoed in her head, a chilling reminder that the threat was far from over. Karen's hands trembled slightly as she reached into her pocket and touched the photo of Max. The adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a cold clarity. The mission wasn't over. The enemy hadn't been defeated. He had only been delayed. And she knew, deep down, that the next move would demand everything she had, every skill, every instinct, every ounce of courage she could summon. Jace leaned close, voice low, almost private. "This was just the first wave, Viper 1. He's not finished, and neither is the mission." Karen's eyes narrowed, her jaw set. "Then I'm ready," she said, the words carrying the weight of every decision she had ever made. "I'll finish it, for Max, for the city, for everyone who can't fight for themselves." Her pulse still raced, her body still tingling with adrenaline, but she felt a grim satisfaction. She had survived, she had acted, and she had protected her son for now. But the threat was still out there, waiting, calculating, and Karen knew one terrifying truth. The war wasn't over. The enemy would return, smarter, faster, deadlier. And when he did, Viper 1 and the mother inside her would have to be ready. Cliffhanger: Karen has stopped the immediate threat, but the enemy hinted that the danger is far from over. The city and her son's safety remain at risk, setting up an even higher stakes confrontation. Karen Hayes leaned against the cold brick wall of a deserted building, catching her breath as the distant sirens faded into the night. The immediate threat had been neutralized, the enemy's accomplices in custody, but a gnawing unease gnawed at her chest. She knew the battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. Her eyes flicked to the tablet in Jace's hand. The screen displayed encrypted communications they had intercepted, messages the enemy had sent before and during the attack. Karen's pulse quickened as she scanned the content. The words were chilling: coordinated strikes, strategic targets, and instructions only someone with deep knowledge of the city and its defenses could give. "He's not just targeting civilians," Karen whispered, voice tight with fear. "He's planning something bigger, something catastrophic." Marcus nodded grimly. "Exactly. He's building a network inside the city, manipulating people and resources, and we caught only the first wave. If we don't act fast, the next one could be devastating." Karen's stomach twisted. She had thought stopping him tonight would be enough. But the more she learned, the more it became clear. This wasn't a single act of revenge or chaos. This was a meticulously planned assault, and her city, her home, and her son were in the crosshairs. Jace's expression hardened. "Karen, he's targeting infrastructure, communications, and key locations in the city. The school district, power grids, emergency services. He wants to cripple everything. And he's doing it methodically. He's smart, he's patient, and he's ruthless." Karen's mind raced, memories of her squad days flashing through her head. The betrayals, the ambushes, the strategic calculations she had made thousands of feet above enemy territory. Those instincts, buried under years of civilian life, surged back. She wasn't just a mother. She was a fighter, trained to anticipate, to strategize, to survive. Her gaze hardened. "Then we stop him, tonight. We can't wait for him to strike again." Marcus's voice was low, deliberate. "It won't be easy. He's planned for contingencies, traps, and distractions. Every step we take could be exactly what he wants." Karen's fingers tightened around the tablet. She thought of Max, of his bright smile, of the mornings she spent making pancakes, of the nights she tucked him in, whispering bedtime stories. She couldn't let him be a casualty in someone else's vendetta. Not now, not ever. Jace leaned closer, voice calm but edged with urgency. "Karen, the intel suggests he has one final objective tonight. It's central, it's strategic, and it's high risk. You're the only one who can intercept him without endangering others. It's the culmination of everything he's set in motion." Karen's heart thundered. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her like never before. Every life in the city, every civilian caught in the crossfire, every breath her son took, it all depended on her next move. She had survived Talon Ridge. She had faced death in the skis, but this was different. This was her home, her family, her city. Her eyes flicked to the drone feed. The target's figure appeared again, moving with deliberate precision toward the waterfront district. Karen's stomach dropped. That area was densely populated, with schools, apartment complexes, and businesses packed close together. Any misstep could spell disaster. "We move now," Karen said, her voice steady despite the racing of her heart. "We intercept him at the waterfront. That's where he'll make his final move." Jace and Marcus nodded. "Agreed," Jace said. "But Karen, be careful. He's anticipating every move. He's counting on us to make mistakes." Karen's mind whirled, calculating angles, escape routes, and contingencies. She felt the familiar rush, the exhilaration of battle, the sharp clarity that came when every decision mattered. She had missed this, the thrill, the challenge, the razor edge of danger, but she also knew the stakes were higher than ever. One wrong move, and Max, the city, and countless innocents would pay the price. As they moved through the streets, Karen couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow seemed to flicker with danger, every alleyway a potential trap. She remembered the words he had spat when she had intercepted the first attack. "You can't stop what's coming." Now she understood. He hadn't been bluffing. He was patient, calculating, and cruel. Karen's pulse raced as they approached the waterfront district. The buildings loomed like silent sentinels, their windows reflecting the dim glow of streetlights. The streets were eerily quiet, a tension hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. The tablet pinged again. The target had set a final device, a high-tech briefcase in the center of a small plaza near the docks. Karen's stomach dropped. Civilians were evacuating, but the timing was critical. One misstep and the device could detonate. Karen took a deep breath. She had trained for scenarios like this, in simulations and in combat, thousands of feet above the ground. But now every second mattered in real time, every step calculated, every decision a matter of life or death. She crouched behind a low wall, surveying the plaza. The target's accomplices were gone, likely repositioning, likely waiting for her to make a move. Karen's mind raced. She had to act fast. She had to be precise. And she had to protect Max, who could be anywhere, unknowingly in the radius of destruction. Karen moved forward, silent, precise, each step calculated. She could see the target now, manipulating the device, his face twisted in concentration. Her breath caught. He looked up, sensing her presence. Their eyes met, and in that instant she saw the same arrogance she had encountered years ago in the desert, the belief that he was untouchable, that he had anticipated every move. Karen's hands tightened around the briefcase. She whispered under her breath, "Not today." Suddenly, a distraction. A siren, a flash of light, sent the target spinning. Karen seized the moment, lunging forward to intercept him. He struggled, twisting violently, but she had anticipated this. Every move, every tactic she had learned over years of combat came flooding back in perfect clarity. They grappled, shadowed by the glow of streetlights, every motion a calculated dance of survival. The briefcase teetered on the edge of the plaza, sparks flying from its wires. Karen's heart hammered. One wrong move, one misstep, and it could explode. Jace's voice crackled through her earpiece. "Karen, do what you have to do. Disable it now." Karen's hands worked quickly, her mind racing through every contingency. The world seemed to slow. The tension, the stakes, the memories of every mission, every loss, every victory, culminating in this single moment. Finally, with a precise maneuver, she disarmed the device, sending sparks flying harmlessly to the ground. The target froze, shock etched on his face. Karen seized the moment, pinning him to the pavement. "You're finished," she hissed. "For Max, for everyone you thought you could hurt." The city exhaled in her mind. The immediate danger was over. Civilians were safe. But Karen knew deep down that this confrontation was only the beginning. Cliffhanger. Karen has neutralized the immediate threat, but the enemy hinted at a larger, more dangerous plan. The war for her city and her son's safety is far from over. Karen Hayes stood on the rooftop of the waterfront plaza, her eyes scanning the night like a predator in the sky she had once ruled. The city lay spread below her, quiet for now, but the echoes of danger still hummed through the streets. Every instinct screamed that the battle wasn't over, not entirely. The man she had just subdued, the traitor who had betrayed her squad years ago, had been only a fragment of a larger plan. And she knew he wouldn't stop until he had tried to destroy everything she loved. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with the intensity of focus. She thought of Max, asleep at home, oblivious to the storm that had descended upon their city. Every beat of her heart reminded her of why she had returned to this life she thought she had abandoned. She was Viper One, and tonight that meant she was both mother and warrior, guardian and avenger. "Karen," Jace's voice came softly through her earpiece, "the target's accomplices were just a diversion. We've traced the main threat. He's preparing a coordinated strike downtown near the financial district. If we don't intercept him, thousands could be at risk." Karen's pulse accelerated. She moved swiftly along the rooftop, calculating every angle, every escape route. Her boots hit the concrete with a rhythm that reminded her of cockpit alarms, missile trajectories, evasive maneuvers. Everything she had learned in the Air Force came rushing back, sharper than ever. Marcus appeared beside her, his presence steady, his eyes scanning the streets below. "You ready for this?" he asked, calm but alert. Karen took a deep breath. "More than ever, let's end this tonight." The helicopter that had been waiting landed silently, its rotors kicking up a storm of wind. Karen climbed aboard, the night sky a blur as the city spread beneath them. Below, the streets were nearly deserted, but the shadows betrayed movement. She could see the enemy, orchestrating his final act, manipulating devices, preparing chaos. Her mind raced. The F-22 might have been the ultimate weapon in the skis, but tonight she had only herself, her instincts, and the tactical support from Jace and Marcus. She leaned over the controls, eyes narrowing. Every calculation mattered. Every split second could save lives or end them. As they approached the downtown sector, Karen saw the target's figure, frantic yet deliberate, moving toward the city's central communications hub. Her stomach tightened. She knew that if he succeeded, the city's entire infrastructure could collapse: traffic lights, emergency services, communications, chaos. And in the chaos, thousands of innocent lives would be at risk, including Max. Karen gritted her teeth. He won't win, not tonight, not ever. The helicopter touched down on a nearby rooftop, giving Karen the tactical advantage. She moved swiftly, her steps precise, every muscle coiled for action. Her heart pounded with adrenaline, but her mind was razor-sharp. She was a mother and a soldier, and tonight those identities would merge into one unstoppable force. The target turned at her approach, eyes wide with recognition and fury. "Viper 1, he spat, rage twisting his features. "You think you can stop me, you caw. Nothing can stop what's coming." Karen's pulse thundered in her ears. She tightened her fists. "You were wrong to come back," she said, her voice low, controlled, deadly. "You're not just fighting a pilot, you're fighting a mother, and I will stop you, no matter what it takes." He lunged toward a device strapped to his chest, a final attempt to unleash chaos. Karen's reflexes, honed through years in combat, took over. She dove, tackling him to the ground. Sparks flew as the device hit the concrete, and she moved instinctively, twisting the mechanism out of his hands. The struggle was fierce. Every motion calculated, every second critical. Karen's muscles burned, her breath ragged, but her mind was sharp. She knew that hesitation would mean disaster. She had to finish this. Not for herself, not for glory, for Max, for every innocent life that had been threatened. Finally, with a surge of strength and precision, Karen disarmed the device, rendering it harmless. The target lay beneath her, defeated, his arrogance and plans shattered in the wake of her skill. She stood, breathing heavily, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Jace and Marcus appeared beside her, covering the streets below, confirming that the remaining threats had been neutralized. Karen allowed herself a brief moment to exhale, to process the magnitude of what had just occurred. The city was safe. The immediate danger had passed. Yet as she looked over the skyline, the lights of the city twinkling like stars scattered across the earth, Karen felt the weight of her decision. She had returned to a life she thought she had left behind. She had embraced the chaos, the danger, the identity of Viper 1. And she realized that she had done it not because she wanted to, but because she had to, for Max, for her city, for herself. Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it, Karen. You stopped him. The city's safe." Karen nodded, though her mind was already shifting to the next thought. Max. She needed to be with him, to see that he was safe, to feel the normalcy she had fought so hard to protect. She thought of his face, of his smile, of the warmth of his tiny hands in hers. And for the first time in hours, she allowed herself a glimmer of relief. The helicopter lifted off, carrying Karen, Jace, and Marcus back toward the residential district. As they approached her apartment, she saw the lights on, the familiar comfort of home. And there, in the window, she saw Max, bouncing slightly in his excitement at seeing his mother return. Relief and love surged through her chest, overwhelming her exhaustion. Karen ran to the door, flinging it open. Max's small arms wrapped around her, and she held him tightly, breathing in the familiar scent, the warmth, the life she had fought to protect. Tears pricked at her eyes. She had survived the impossible, confronted her past, and preserved the most important thing in her world, her son. Jace and Marcus stood nearby, giving her a respectful nod before retreating to report the mission's conclusion. Karen knew they had saved countless lives tonight, but the personal victory, the reunion with Max, was hers alone. As she held him, Max looked up at her, eyes wide. "Mom, you're home," he whispered. Karen smiled, brushing his hair from his forehead. "I'm home, baby, and I'm never leaving you." For the first time since leaving the Air Force, Karen allowed herself to be both mother and warrior. Viper 1, protector of the skis and the streets, and a mom who had fought tooth and nail to keep her son safe. She knew the city would always hold dangers, that threats would emerge in new forms. But for tonight, for this moment, they were safe. And as Corinne held Max close, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat against hers, she realized something profound. She had not just returned. She had reclaimed her identity, her courage, and her purpose. Viper One was alive, and she would always fight, not just for duty but for love. The city lights shimmered in the distance, and Corinne allowed herself a final thought, a promise, a vow that would never be broken. No matter the threat, no matter the danger, she would always protect her son. Always. The night was quiet now, but Corinne knew one truth above all. The past might try to catch up, danger might return, but Viper One, and the mother within her, would be ready. And for Max, for the city, and for herself, she would always rise.